What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be slightly different to what we've normally been doing, but we wanted to give this one a try.
Yeah, we were out in Phuket, as you guys saw, and we met up with our good friend Buckman Ferguson, who was responsible for running the Wakeboard Site, which was a wakeboarding related website. And I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of free flowing right now.
I'll help you.
Boop, cut. No. I got it.
I'm not even going to cut that out.
So, we were in Phuket recently and we met up with our good friend Buckman Ferguson. Buckman, for 5 years, ran a website called the Wakeboard Site, which kept riders up to date with all the latest competition results, new tricks and other information. So we caught up with him and basically found out why it had to come to an end.
Okay, well, welcome back everyone. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. We've decided that we are going to do a bit more of a podcast. And so we would like to welcome our guest, Mr. Buckman Ferguson. For those of you that don't know, Buckman was the guy that was running the Wakeboard Site for a number of years and put in a load of hard work, but sadly that's come to an end now. And we just decided that we would get Buckman here to sit down and we'll have a little chat and just kind of find out the story behind the Wakeboard Site and things like that. Yeah, so if you want to give yourself a bit of an introduction.
Where do I start, man? Well, obviously, as I said, I'm Buckman Ferguson. I grew up near Boston, and then after graduating college, got into wakeboarding and moved to Florida and fell in love with it. And I just wanted to be involved as much as I possibly could. And so I started working at OWC for a bit, and then I was always looking for a place that had all the contests and all the riders, because I grew up, watching American football and ice hockey, and ESPN is like this massive database in America where you can go and it has the results from every game and it has the statistics from every player. And I wanted that for wakeboarding and it really didn't exist, so I figured I'd make one because I thought it was something the industry needed, and I thought it was something that could give the sport a platform to grow off of. And I thought it would be really good for the organizations that already exist to have that, because it was amazing to me that even the organizations that were putting on these events didn't keep track of their own contests.
Yeah.
Like after a contest was over, it was like it was done, and then they'd move on to the next thing. And so if you wanted to go back and look at, man, who won the world championship from like 2005, there was no place you could go to find that information. So I started doing lots and lots of research and going back, and it's unbelievable the places that I happened to find results from contests way back in the day. And then there was this guy who I've actually never met. His name is Dean Turkle, and he used to work for the WWA, and he sent me loads and loads and loads of results from back in like the 1990s and early 2000s.
Damn.
And it took me probably like 6 months to go through it all and digitize it all into a database, because it was all like Xeroxed pieces of paper. I'm like, I can do anything with this. So anyways, I got a lot of support from the riders almost immediately. I think everyone wanted something like that, and everyone was super stoked about it. And I got a lot of support from the parents as well, especially from the younger riders. Those kids are 18, 19 years old and traveling the world and competing. The parents obviously loved that they could go somewhere and see how they're doing and track how they're doing throughout the year and all that.
So Buckman, you said that you moved down to Florida and you ended up working at OWC, but how did you actually find out about wakeboarding or get introduced into it?
Yeah, so I grew up in New Hampshire, just north of Boston, and we only have about 3 months out of the year that the lakes are not frozen.
And we think England's bad.
There might be, I may have exaggerated a little bit there, but I mean, it's 3 months where it's like warm enough that you actually want to be in the water. But yeah, one summer I was just out. I grew up snowboarding, and then during the summer I had a buddy who was a water skier, and they had a water ski boat, and then his sister wakeboarded a little bit behind the little ski boat, and I was like, yeah, I want to try this out. And I swear I did it for like 15 minutes and I was hooked. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
That's sick.
And then I started doing all the research about who the best riders were, and I got addicted, man. And so I was watching all these videos, and I figured out where all the riders were, and I noticed that most of them are from Orlando, and I was like, well, that's where I gotta go.
Oh, that's sick, man. No, it's cool that you you found something you're interested in and kind of pursued it. You know? Nice.
Yeah,
well, yeah, it was definitely a kind of a first of its kind. I think the site, exactly like you say. I know ourselves that we've been in competitions before, and you kind of finish the competition, and then it's almost like the results just vanish into nothing.
And it's definitely like when we were at home as well, you want to see like what's going on, and it was always super sick. I think even on the Instagram, just to have that feed come up where you just see that like results were coming through, it definitely was handy, and people at home I think love to have that. But I guess we should probably start out with finding out like how you actually were getting the results and stuff in, 'cause I know we spoke last night about it, and you were telling us that like it was actually a manual thing that you would go in and put the results in, so maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, so every single contest I would manually enter in each score from each individual rider in each heat, and it was a really time-consuming process, and it was very difficult for some of the contests because some of them did not post the results publicly, and sometimes you'd have to wait a few days until an image would pop up and it would just be a podium or whatever, and you're like, wait, who made semifinals and all this? So eventually I started hitting up some of the riders that were competing, and I'm in America, and if a contest is happening in Germany or whatever, I would just hit them up on Instagram being like, hey, I know you're there, can you send me heat results from this heat or whatever?
Yeah.
And sometimes, in America it'd be at 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and I'd wake up and just enter in stuff that people like send me the really low quality images from a that were posted on a board somewhere.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun in a way, because it was always like doing secret research in a way.
Man, do you know who you remind me of? Have you ever watched Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah, of course.
Varys.
Yeah.
The mate that's got all his little birds everywhere. I feel like you were Varys, mate. You were the one guy, and then you just had all your little sources everywhere, just feeding back information to you. Would you say that you were probably one of the most knowledgeable people about kind of the wakeboard contest?
I would think so, yeah. And it was interesting, I would have old school professional riders calling me up asking me about who landed tricks back in the day. Like a few months ago, I had Sean Murray call me up and be like, hey, do you know who was the first to land this trick? I'm like, weren't you there? He was like, yeah, I think I was, but I don't remember. And I like looked up on my, because I keep track of everything, and I'm like, oh yeah, it was Parks Bonifay. He landed it back in 1998. He's like, oh, thanks, Buckman.
It's crazy, isn't it? And I think it's actually quite sad now knowing that there might not be that way of tracking things where once we did have it, but maybe now we could move on to like sort of when it was in the peak, how many people were viewing it, if you know that, or why it ended up ending how it did, sort of thing.
Yeah, so at its height, I think I was getting about 20,000 viewers per month on my website.
That's not bad, to be fair.
Yeah, which I felt was pretty good, and it was a bit frustrating because I was trying to find out. It was almost impossible to find out what my competition was getting. I was constantly asking people what kind of viewers Alliance and Wakeboarding Mag were getting, and it was like even the people who were working for the company didn't know. They're like, oh yeah, I don't know where that information is, and I got really bummed out when I got someone who was working for Wakeboarding Mag, pulled up the analytics on their phone and showed me, and I was like, I'm thinking in my head, I always thought, maybe they're getting double what I'm getting, and it was like 20 times what I was getting, and I was like, I looked, I said, that's not real, and they said, I know. I said, what do you mean you know? They're like, well, we have ways of getting these numbers.
Oh, mate.
It's crazy.
And so I was like, at that point, I was just like, I can't compete with that. I'm not gonna do click farms or buy things like that. It's just dishonest, and it's bad for the sport, and it's bad for the industry.
It's just a bad thing in general, really. Like, you can see that on Instagram and on all kinds of social media. Like, people can pay for these followers or page views or subscribers, and it's just like, it actually it annoys me, because it's like, people are then profiting from that, It's like it kind of undermines the people that have actually put in hard work and grown organically, in comparison to those that have just, spent like £1,000 on subscribers or
Yeah, I mean,
clicks
it's
and-
one thing for, to buy Instagram followers and all that as a rider. I don't think it benefits them that much. It just looks better for you,
Yeah.
I guess. But when the companies are doing it and sponsors are paying
Yeah.
to get these kind of numbers, then it's just bad for the industry. And I think that's part of the reason that this industry has lost a lot of followers or a lot of sponsors. I mean, because
Yeah,
I
so I
think-
mean, in kind of relation to the page views, obviously you said that you were getting 20,000 views per month.
Yeah.
So was that kind of your main source of like revenue from the website was then advertising?
I never got any revenue. Like through the whole, I did it for 5 years and I never made a penny from any of it.
Damn.
Crazy.
Yeah, which is really disappointing. I was, and maybe it's partly my fault. I probably should have done a little bit more to try and, reach out to sponsors, and I'm sure someone would have been willing to give me something. But I was pretty disappointed that no one, like I would reach out to some companies and they didn't even know about my site. I'd been around for a few years and I was getting all these viewers, and
Yeah.
all the riders knew about my site.
Mhm.
Anyone involved, and I would go to people like that were very involved in the sport. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this wakeboard site thing. I'd love to work with you, and they say, what's that? I don't know what that is.
But then, if that was the case, then what kept you motivated for the 5 years that you were doing it?
Just the hope that at some point I would gain enough recognition that everyone in the industry would know what this was and start using it. And I think
Yeah.
the people who knew about it were using it on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I had a lot of people telling me, man, this is the only site I ever go to, and I don't know what I'd do without this.
It's
and
almost like a you don't know what you got till you lost it type
Yeah.
thing. I think maybe now everyone's going to realise that actually without these records of what tricks have gone down and world's first and all
I know
these
the
things,
history's going to get lost.
it's
somehow.
gonna get to a stage where people are going to be landing tricks in a few years' time and claiming they're the world's first, but if
Yeah.
no one's actually got records of it, like we were talking the other day about the breaders doing double flip mope fives and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that,
That was
no
nuts.
doubt in a few years someone's probably going to come along, do it, and probably think that they might be the first person to do it when
Yeah.
6 years ago now these boys were putting it down. And
Yeah, it's
if
like
there's-
a big dig through the internet, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is,
It's
it
deep,
really
it's
is.
deep, and people used to use Vimeo a lot as well, and I sometimes forget that Vimeo even exists, but there's a lot of my favourite videos on Vimeo.
Yeah.
And I totally forget about it, but yeah, it's like some of the old school bangers are on there. And
Yeah. Well, and that's what's the other nice thing about my site is I had the videos of every rider on their page so that they wouldn't get lost.
and there was results as well, wasn't there? That was
Oh yeah, you could go back. For the riders that were competing for 10 years, you could go back 10 years and see how they did. As a rookie, which was really cool. Especially when Corey Tunison was in his rookie season, doing things that haven't been done in forever. And I think he had the most successful season of any rookie since Parks Bonifay. And no one knows that unless they're doing the research and they keep track of that. So it's kind of a shame that I didn't get more support from the industry.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember when, I actually don't remember, how old were we when Buckman kind of first reached out to us about the wakeboard site?
probably years ago now.
I think I was probably about 17 when you first messaged me, asking for my information. You were asking for my height and weight and stuff. I was like, damn, this guy's collecting a lot of information.
Yeah.
He's working for the government.
And sadly now I'm a lot heavier than I was then.
I remember getting my profile on there, and it was actually a big deal to me when I was a kid. I was
Yeah.
like, I got my name on the wakeboard site. Get your videos,
Yeah.
your best results. I was stoked.
Was there ever a kind of criteria for a rider to be on that list, because you had cable riders, boat riders, and then
Yeah.
free riders,
Yeah.
right?
So, deciding who was going to get onto my site was always a very difficult decision to make.
And also some controversy.
Oh, of course, and it's subjective,
Yeah.
But I took how much the riders involved in the industry, of course. So you can't just go to one competition and make finals and get a profile. You kind of have to actively be involved, and at least you don't have to compete all the time. But if you're not competing, you got to be releasing videos.
Yeah.
So you have to be, doing something that is, contributing to the professional industry. And then as long as you're doing decently well in the competitions, or you're constantly releasing films that look like professional quality, then you got a profile. But there were people, I think parents more than anyone, who got pretty butthurt that their son or daughter didn't have a profile, and I always had to send a message back, be like, hey, just keep doing what you're doing. You're on my radar. I don't think it's time yet, but
It's crazy that there was that sort of influence going through, and that people cared that much about like getting onto the site. But it's like I said, I think it's quite a big deal to a lot of people, and when it was up and running, to have your profile on there, it almost like legitimized you as a rider and kind of set your name in the sport slightly more.
I mean, I personally think that if you're kind of that strongly fussed about having a name on the wakeboard site, that you're kind of you settled and you're like, why am I not on it? It's almost like it doesn't really matter. Just keep doing what you're doing, like keep progressing yourself, and like obviously someone will notice you.
Right.
It is a bit crazy to me that people got super like.
And it's like it's not like you're gonna get on you're not gonna get on the site and be like, sweet, I'm done. Like that's all I want.
Right.
You're gonna carry on riding anyway, so you might as well just carry on riding till you get on it.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's always the really young, the 14, 15-year-olds that are like, oh man, why am I on here? It's like, be patient, bud.
Yeah, that's always right. But so how long in total were you running the site for?
I think almost exactly 5 years.
Nice.
Because I shut it down right when it expired, so it was on a yearly thing.
And what kind of, for you, was your turning point of thinking, right, that's it, like we've had a good run, it's time now to...
I don't think there was an actual moment. I think it was just something that like kind of dwindled out. I was so disappointed in the lack of support that I was getting from other businesses in the industry, and I just kept waiting, and maybe I should have been a little bit more proactive going after sponsors and things like that, but then I saw sponsors continually dropping out, Joby dropping all their riders and Monster Energy dropping out and all that, and I'm just like, man, if these sponsors are just completely dropping out of the industry. And then there were a couple times I would hit up pretty big name companies and be like, hey, I'd love to make a post about your new product or whatever. Throw me $100 and I'll make an article. And I'd get an email back that says, oh, we're not really interested in that right now. And I'm just like, man, I just got so discouraged.
Yeah, it's honestly pretty crazy to me, because I think that like with new cable parks and System 2s and everything kind of popping up more and more like everywhere, it's becoming a lot more accessible for people to like wakeboard. Yet the kind of money in it is nowhere near what it was like when things first started out, when it was kind of the boat dominated,
Well, and I think we're at this point now where people kind of forget how big it used to be, or the especially for the younger riders, they don't know at all how big it used to be.
In like the hot the Dan Knott days, and when Nick was on boat big time, those are the days when we grew up.
Or even the Rafterone days, when Rafterone was winning every single contest and traveling all over the world.
So I guess, Buckman, you were just saying about kind of sponsors dropping out of wakeboarding and stuff. Maybe like you could tell us what your thoughts are about kind of why sponsors are dropping out and what needs to change to get more sponsors in, and how things maybe could get back on track.
Oh boy.
Big question.
Yeah, and certainly this is a subjective answer. I can only give you kind of what my observations have been from the American side, working with, I used to work for the WWA and the Pro Tour for a little bit. I think the biggest issue right now in the professional side of the industry is that the people running the top companies have been doing it for a long time. A lot of them have families and they're just burnt out and they've lost their passion, and they're honestly kind of lazy now, I mean, I don't mean to call anyone out, but in a way I don't blame them, they've been through it, and they've been through the heyday of it, and they see how small it's gotten, so they're just not putting in the effort anymore. And so I think one of the biggest reasons we lost a lot of sponsors was a lot of over-promising and under-delivering. Companies would go to sponsors and say, hey, we'll give you XYZ, and then they'd only deliver X, but they have already paid, and then the sponsor would get really upset, and eventually, understandably, the sponsor is just like, we don't want to work in this industry anymore.
Yeah.
So I think the way that has to change is there needs to be a pretty major turnover at the top levels of the companies that are running this industry.
Yeah, it is a weird one, honestly, because when you actually watch back some of the old riders, what they were doing in the day, obviously during that time, that was kind of the best possible things that were being done on a wakeboard. You know, like Nick Davies lands a 315. You know, everybody lost their mind. Whereas now it's like there's 13-year-old kids that can 315. But it's like the money then was, you know, Nick bought an R8 and a Range Rover. We were little groms down at the cable, and he popped up in his R8. And
it's a shame because right now the level of talent in this industry is it's at an all-time high. It's unbelievable what all these riders are doing, and it's a shame that now the industry is smaller. I mean, when I say the industry, the professional with sponsors and all that is now smaller than it's ever been.
So I was going to carry on and say, I think one person who feels very passionate about this, who I think would be great to talk to, would be John Dryling again on one of these, if we do some more of these podcast things. But he's definitely, I think, feels very strongly about what you were almost saying, but from a rider's perspective, saying about how maybe riders need to work differently with sponsors and perhaps how that needs to change a little bit to create more in the sport. Like, do you have any ideas on that? Or
I personally agree with that as well. You know, it's like almost when it's not so much the riders now, but it's almost when you're young and coming up. You know, it's like we were a textbook example of this. You know, you're a young kid, and a company reaches out. Oh, hey, we'd love to give you some clothes. You know, yeah, give me free clothes. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's great and all, but then it becomes the standard for companies to only send out free clothes. Right. You know, so then by doing that, it's almost like you are taken away from like the good riders.
Companies realize how little riders will ride for.
And I think this is almost like a whole nother topic on itself. I think we'll have to discuss it another time, and I'm hoping we can sit down with John at some point, because I know he has a lot of knowledge about that, and maybe that could be something we could discuss more.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess we'll get back to the topic of the wakeboard site.
It's interesting you bring up John, because John and I are very close, and he actually helped me, like when I was first designing the site. You know, he was giving me input on how he thought, you know, things should be, and he's like, hey, you should add this or whatever. And so we've had loads and loads and loads of conversations just like this for years.
John, without a doubt, loves wakeboarding more than anyone. He might be the only man that knows more about wakeboarding than Buckman, possibly.
Yeah,
honestly.
So I guess whilst we got it here, we were talking last night, and you were telling us about the spreadsheets and stuff of information that you have of riders and first tricks they've landed.
Yeah.
Are you able to show us that, Buckman?
Yes. I'll show you. So actually, I don't have all the documents that I thought I had. It's all on a hard drive in America. But I was able to pull up a couple things that I had sent to people a while ago. But just for example, like this is just Pro Tour podiums. It's a little bit outdated, but this goes back all the way down to
that's nuts.
1992. Of course, I'm missing some from back. We'll
chuck a screenshot of this up for you guys to watch, because
and I got women. This is Wakeboard World Series. This is Wake Park World Series, and then we got traditional and features only. And this is just podiums. I've got another.
All at the bottom as well. The pro man, pro women.
Yeah. And then this is all like the Triple Crown didn't last very long, obviously, but I've got more documents of like who was the youngest and oldest to like podium or win a contest and every contest, and I've got all the tricks and who landed what trick first, and it's just like
let's pause.
Should close this down now.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to kind of bring this to a conclusion, but it's been sick talking to you, Buckman, definitely.
I'm stoked you guys wanted to do this, and I'm happy to do it, and I hope that, you know, I hope that one day this industry, you know, has a resurgence, and, you know, I've got a lot that I want to accomplish outside of wakeboarding, but, you know, I love it so much, I'm sure I'll find my way back in at some point. I'd love to be involved.
It's emotional goodbye to the wakeboard.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of riders kind of have a lot of respect for what you did, and definitely myself and them. So thanks for.
I appreciate that.
Thank you from wakeboarding, Buckman.
Definitely.
Hey, thank you
guys. On behalf of wakeboarding.
No problem. Well, I guess that concludes our first podcast with Buckman Ferguson. Drop us a comment below if you've enjoyed today's video. It's actually been a lot of fun for us making it. Quite enjoyed this format of filming things. So yeah, let us know if you'd like to see more, who you'd like to see, or if you don't like it, then just let us know, because we won't do those again.
I think, so this one might be a bit more for the wakeboarding nerds out there, but yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed the podcast style. Of course, not perfect conditions as well. We've had planes going past and mopeds, but we're hoping in the future we're going to find a quieter place to do it, and we'll get some more in-depth conversations hopefully going if you guys enjoyed it. We hope you guys enjoyed watching that one with Buckman. It was super interesting to sit down and talk to him, and we're hoping to do a few more of these around the world with different riders as we sort of travel.
Yeah, we both enjoyed doing this podcast format today. If you guys enjoyed it, let us know down below in the comments. Give us a big thumbs up. And for us today, we'll see you guys next time.
We're off to watch King of the Air in South Africa.
Woo! We're in South Africa now, actually.